why don't we do that? Welcome everybody to the Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting. This is for November 14th, 2022. We're meeting ever popularly on Zoom. Stephen, do we have any visitors' comments?
We do. We have a special guest with us today. Commissioner Roy Rogers is joining us. Wanted to share a few thoughts. So, Commissioner, you can go ahead, I think.
There we go. I'm unmuted. Well, thank you very much. I only wanted to appear for a few minutes, and thank you for putting me on camera, Stephen. I noticed that my friend Pete Truax isn't here. I think I kind of forgot that he changes the guard right at midnight on the day of elections, but I just wanted to say how much he was a asset when I was with you on WCCC. He did a tremendous job representing his city, and I can think of many times that we were in DC, he and I and Jeff, talking about the city's needs and various issues in Washington County. And I unfortunately was unable to make his event on Saturday, so I thought he might be here. But so I guess I won't get to do that to him on film, so I'll have to try to figure out some other way. But for all of you who didn't have the pleasure of working with Pete for many years, he certainly was a star. He certainly represented Washington County, and he certainly was somebody that we should all respect for all of his activities. So thank you very much, Jeff, for allowing me to say a few things, even though he's not here to hear any part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised Pete's not here. He doesn't, they do their swearing in a little earlier. I know most of us will do it in January. I think they do theirs at the first meeting in December. So he's still a member of this auspicious group today, but I'm not sure what's, I didn't hear anything or see any text from him. So we will send him your video, bon voyage. It was good seeing you, Roy.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other visitors' comments, Stephen?
We do. You all just received an email just a little while ago from Teresa Gartner. We did have an email comment that was submitted by a constituent named Dave Robinson. He's also online, and I think, Dave, if you wanted to provide public comment, this would be your opportunity to do that. Dave, are you able to speak?
I see he's unmuted, but none of us can hear you, Dave.
So, Mr. Robinson, I did want to let you know we have shared your email with the committee members as requested. And if you want to try one more time, if you want to try to unmute, let's see if we can hear you. If you wanted to make a comment.
I've seen the mute flicker on and off, Dave, but we aren't hearing anything. Okay. We'll have to just read it later, it sounds like. And Pete, you missed the opportunity. Roy Rogers was saying nice things about you at the beginning of the meeting in your absence.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. I wish I'd been here to hear the stuff, but it's sort of like, hearing your own obituary, and I'm not sure I want to do that.
Oh, he didn't roast you. Don't worry, Pete.
In spite of all our encouragements, he said nice things about you anyways.
Actually, I didn't think he was talking about you.
Because they were so nice, Gary?
They were so nice.
Hey, I can hear you guys, okay?
Oh, that sense hasn't left yet, huh?
Okay. Introductions and roll call then. I think we'll move on to that, Stephen, and the idea of getting this show on the road.
Yes, sir.
I know Mayor Callaway's out today, so Councillor Van Buren is Rick's covering for him.
Beverin, yep.
Beverin. Someday I'll get that last name right, but there's no promise.
Right. So I'll do a quick roll call if that's all right.
Thanks, please.
Confirm our attendance. So I'll go by order of jurisdiction again. Mayor Jones for Banks.
Here.
Mayor Beatty for Beaverton.
Here.
Mayor Delane for Cornelius,
Present.
Mayor Sherrado for Durham,
Here.
Mayor Truax for Forest Grove.
Here.
Let's see, Councilor Van Beveren for Hillsborough.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Fender for King City.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Linehan for
Here.
North Plains. Thank you. Mayor Mays for Sherwood.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Snyder for Tigard.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Bubenik for Tualatin.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Fitzgerald for Wilsonville. Not sure if I've seen Mayor Fitzgerald yet. Keep an eye for her. And Commissioner Fye for Washington County.
Present.
Thank you. And I do see we have Metro Councilor Rosenthal with us. Is Matt Freitag with us from ODOT? I don't think I see Matt.
Matt's not here today from ODOT. I am here, Glenn Bolin, he, him pronouns, regional planner with ODOT.
Great. Are you sitting in on Matt's substituting for Matt?
I am substituting for Matt today, and I'm also joining Kim Ellis for discussion of the mobility policy.
Okay, great. Well, since you're sitting in for Matt, Teresa, could you go ahead and promote Glenn to a panelist?
I think I am.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Oh, there you are. Sorry. Looking over this way. All right. And I don't believe we have a port representative. And then I saw Tara for TriMet, correct? Yep. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Next up is consideration of the meeting minutes from October 17th, 2022. Any adjustments or changes recommended? Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
by- I'm going to give the motion to Mayor Linehan, and I think the second was Mayor Fender. Yep, I get the thumbs up. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimous. That takes us on to our first piece of business, 2023 Regional Transportation Plan Project Solicitation Framework. That's a tongue twister. Ellie, and I'm not going to try to murder it too much. Holmquist? Pretty close. at least.
Perfect.
Thanks. We'll be describing the policy approach for the CALA projects to introduce the 2023 RTP. And this will be introduced at JPEC this month, and JPEC will be asked to make recommendations to move forward with the approaches in their December meeting. The packet includes a memo from the TPAC describing the approach. The memo in the JPEC packet, expected to be similar, was not available at the time of the posting of this material. So after the presentation, Chris will review the role with the Washington County Coordinating Committee in the process as outlined in the memo in the packet. Allie, I think you have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much. And Teresa, I believe that you were going to share the slides.
Yes, give me just a second. Thanks.
I think this is on me. I thought you were doing it, but Teresa can grab them.
I got an email that there was a little switch. So,
Oh,
but I can.
okay. I thought that you were doing it. Teresa, did you modify them though, Allie?
No.
Okay. Teresa, do you have them? Just checking. Otherwise, we might have to send it back to you, Allie.
No problem. I'm happy to share if that's easier.
It might actually be rather than Teresa finding them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. Apologies. Give me one moment, please, as I pull those
We have
up.
a 3-day
Oh.
weekend and everybody has to get retrained.
Sounds about right. Yep. Okay, I've got those up.
And so we just need to give her authority to share. There you go.
I think I got it. Awesome.
You did. Okay. Thank you.
That work. Perfect. Then I will go ahead and get started. It is in a PDF. Let me just make sure. Oh, apologies. I think this is let me make sure this is the right one before I get into it. I apologize. I didn't, this is it. Okay, great. Let me reshare. I didn't want
I
you all
have
to
it
watch.
ready also if you want me to. I forgot I was unmuted.
This is, I got it up now, I think.
Okay,
Are you
thanks.
seeing it, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, okay. Sorry, apologies again. Yes, I am here to provide some information on the upcoming call for projects process. I wanted to start with the overall RTP timeline. So right now we're working towards reaching the milestone of updating the project and program priorities to start building the investment strategy for the plan. And so informing this is the work that we've been done, updating the policy framework. We're working on updating the revenue forecast, and Elliot has been presenting. We've been updating the needs analysis for the plan over the past few months. Some of this is still ongoing right now, together along with doing engagement both through the county coordinating committees with stakeholders and then also the public to inform the call for projects process, which will start on January 6th, as you can see in this diagram here. And the purpose is to be developing the financially constrained list of priority projects for the plan, looking to our near term of 2030 as well as 2045. And then also a strategic list of priorities that regional partners agree to work together to advance if additional revenues become available. And so we're looking to work with the county coordinating committees, with ODOT, TriMet, and SMART as they work with local partners to identify priorities collaboratively. And the revenue forecast we are working with partners to develop now will establish funding cost targets that will determine the number of projects that may be submitted. And we're also asking that county coordinating committees submit an endorsement letter stating the packages that are the subregions agreed upon priorities for the 2023 regional transportation plan. So the coordinating committees really do play a key role in this process. But where do these projects come from? The current 2018 regional transportation plan is a starting point, but these also come from updated local transportation system plans, concept and corridor plans, or also some of the legislative earmark projects. There are opportunities for partners to identify what is new and what has changed and just determine if there are updates to existing priorities or if there are new priorities. To be eligible, a project needs to be part of the regional system, which is basically on our regional maps, inside Metro's boundary, cost at least $2 million, or be a bundle of projects around a specific topical area that cost that much. And then most importantly, they should also help us achieve our regional vision, goals, and policies. And so these are submitted by jurisdictional partners, and the projects will provide information that will support an outcomes-based technical analysis around our regional goals and investment priorities: equity, climate, safety, mobility, and then economy, which is one of our goal areas in the revised 2023 goals. And then also we will be looking for some public engagement documentation from jurisdictions. So that is going to document how the public has been involved in the process, whether the public was involved in the prioritization process for the projects. And really, mainly, it helps us certify for Title VI requirements, because that's something that we're required to do. And so one important point too is that all of these different pieces of the plan that you can see listed here. So you've heard from me on the high capacity transit strategy update, maybe hearing from Kim on the regional mobility policy, and then a number of different areas. All of these you've been hearing about are helping inform how we think about updating the investment priorities. And our policy framework really starts, of course, with the 2040 growth concept map and the supporting policies identifying priority areas and investments critical to meeting the goals of the climate smart strategy and that are implemented through local plans like yours. And so stepping back again too, it includes the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan visions, goals, and policies that were recently approved by JPAC Council, thinking about equitable transportation, mobility options, climate action and resilience, safe system, and thriving economy. And it also thinks about our priorities in supporting centers, ports, industrial areas, employment areas, and other regional destinations to have them be accessible through a variety of multimodal connections that help people, communities, and businesses thrive and prosper. And it helps us support investments in line with our safety priorities, thinking about high injury corridors where we're seeing serious and fatal crashes occur, and reflecting the mobility policy, investments from a comprehensive suite of strategies for managing congestion on the network. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm a slide behind. That's right here. And then also other network maps outlining the regional networks and priorities for investment, thinking especially about where we've identified needs on those systems. And so then I mentioned that performance assessment will be looking at taking the information that is provided through the projects. And this is something that's new, the way that we're packaging it this time for the RTP. And we're looking to report back at a high level how the projects in the plan are helping advance regional goals related to these questions shown here. Something we always do, but the way that we're looking at answering these questions and reporting out and providing a lot of that information will look a little bit different. And so that's something that we will be doing following the call for projects starting in March. The call for projects process will happen from January 6th to February 17th. We'll do a little bit of work on our end to check for completeness, and then using that information to do that performance assessment. And that's something that we'll be sharing back with the technical and policy committees, both for the county coordinating committees and with Metro's committees and the public later this spring. We're also asking, as a new requirement this time, is project sponsors to submit letters of endorsement from their governing body by May 1st. And so that's something a little bit different. The county coordinating committees will be endorsing the packages for the subregion, but all of the project sponsors will be asked to provide this letter of endorsement. And that's really so that you all are all aware, all policymakers are aware of what's submitted before JPAC and Metro Council consider input and findings and provide direction on finalizing priorities for the RTP that'll happen later on in May and June. And at that point, that will lead us to public review of the draft RTP, including the updated project and program priorities this summer. But of course, as you can kind of see on the bottom here, there's a lot of touch points and engagement before then, of course, as well. And with that, that is the short overview I've prepared for today.
Well, with that in mind, oh, Jason's already got a hand up. We got the questions. You saw the memo then, obviously, so you're ready. So the first one of the questions, does the policy framework provide adequate direction? Jason, is your question in relation to the first question or into the presentation as a whole?
Probably just more of a general comment about the timeline, but I can do it whenever.
Oh, this will be fine. Go ahead and jump in now.
I just want to point out that the timing and the timeline of January 6th to February 17th, or even if you consider we know about it now, going into the holidays, for the scope of work that needs to be done to do this well in the jurisdictions, I just will share that I'm a bit concerned about how challenging the timeline is. I think we'll make it work, but I wanted to make that comment because I think the basis of this work being done by each jurisdiction, I mean, that is the work, and it just seems potentially a bit rushed, but maybe I'm alone.
Okay. Rick?
Yes, Mayor Callaway asked me to convey a point under the policy framework presentation, and he wanted to point out that congestion should be in there, as we are the #8 most congested region in the country, you know, and we're about the 25th largest in terms of population. So that's just a comment. He thought it should be included in the needs analysis.
Stephen, did you have a process question or something?
Yeah, just very quickly, I just wanted to note for the record, Council President Ackerval has joined us on behalf of the City of Wilsonville.
Great, thank you. Pete.
Yeah, I guess my comment piggybacks on what Mayor Snyder said about the timeline. This is going to be an awkward period of time, not only because it's somewhat truncated, but because there's going to be some changes in some of the people at the table here. And I think it's imperative that you could give some time for some of the new people to get up to speed on this very important topic. And if we sort of dismiss it and say, hey, you know, they got to learn to move at light speed, I think that's going to turn some people off. So I would suggest if there's a way to, again, lengthen that process out, not only for the holiday period that's coming up, but also for after the holidays, there will be some new bodies around this table, and I think that's important. So thank you for allowing me, and good report, by the way. I appreciate the openness and the information.
Thanks, Pete. Lacey?
I agree with the timeline. I mean, we're going to have 4 new mayors in our region. And I think that alone with new counselors, it's going to be challenging to up speed as fast as possible, which then by default puts staff in the driver's seat of this policy discussion we're having, which is, I think, not where no one wants to be. I also think about the timeline as far as the CFAC rules that are coming down on top of us. How is Metro planning to interpret those rules and have it part of the process? By the time we come out the other end, we're going to have to be abiding by them.
Allie, any question or comment on that one?
Yeah, I can provide a couple comments just in response. Thank you all for your feedback. Really, really appreciate it, and definitely hear you on the timing. As far as, I think I'll start with the congestion management. That's a great point. I did flash in the PowerPoint, although apologies because I was a slide behind and it was only briefly. We do actually consider, we have our congestion management network, and that is a lens that we will be applying. So that is a very important point that we will be considering as part of this work. As far as the timing, I definitely understand the concerns around the speed of the timing. The main driver is that we are looking to meet our RTP adoption deadline is by the end of this year. And so to provide the time for the public review process to happen this summer and provide ample opportunities for that to still have influence on the plan, that we're looking to have the analysis happen in spring and earlier in the summer so that we can meet that deadline as well. And so that's really the driver of the process. We do know there's also new staff that are participating as part of this round, myself included, actually. So we are doing a lot of work to make sure that we have ample trainings and that we have Metro liaisons and that we're available for the county coordinating committee is wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris, for all of your work to coordinate folks. There's been a lot of prep meetings already, and we're available for those to help as well. And so that's something that we'll be looking at extending across the board and trying to be as intentional as possible about providing a lot of the opportunity to be involved and make sure that people are involved in the process and able to involve by having all of the right information and having that as early as possible.
Thanks, Allie. Krista?
Yeah, thank you. I had a question that maybe you could clarify about how the equity focus areas, how those EFAs are defined. Because I noticed in the presentation or in reviewing the notes too, that the definition, I think it was on pages 51, 58, it might have been included somewhere else, But it called out various groups within, our communities. And then on 29, when it was kind of the map with the different various shades of purple on it, that seemed to be using a more limited definition. And so I wondered if you could provide clarification on that, specifically with older senior citizens, older populations, mobility issues, things like that, if that's included.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I actually have that up on my other screen, which is what I was doing, just to make sure that I could go through all of the details. One thing is that we did update those for this RTP. So we do have the 2020 equity focus areas. We did notice a little bit of difference between that and the 2018 RTP too, just in some of the areas that popped up. We do base that on census information. We do use census tracts, and we look at the combination of communities of color and limited English proficiency combined as one measure. And then a second measure that we do is look at communities of color, limited English proficiency, those are the limited English proficiency, and low incomes as well. And so often we'll have two different shades of the map to show when you overlap the two categories versus the three, how those look different. One thing that Matthew did with the sort of multicolored map was trying to show when we had the light blue and dark blue map. Sometimes it was kind of hard to show when you overlap those on top of each other, which tracks are showing up in more than one category. And so the more purple, green, I forget all the colors that were included, that was trying to show a little bit more variation in the different categories when you're combining those and which ones are in both categories. So that's why that looks a little bit different. And that is what that map includes.
Okay, I think that makes sense with the color saturation, I guess, on the maps, but why don't we look at older populations, senior citizens, or limited mobility when we're looking at the EFAs?
That's a great question. These are the equity focus area populations that we looked at focusing on as part of our equity framework, and something that we developed in the 2018 RTP. We do look at the other groups, seniors, youth, those with people with disabilities, a number of different populations that would be considered historically marginalized as well. We do have that data and we do consider it. But as far as the equity focus areas and what we were focusing on for our equity framework, these were the top areas that were popping out as something that came out of that process for within the policy focus.
Okay, I guess I would advocate for if our definition includes all of these different groups, then we truly are doing that in all of the analysis in the mapping, and so we don't have a mismatch of what we say we're including and then not including all of those different groups. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know that this was really around to lifting up communities of color and communities of color voices. So with that, and so the communities of color and the limiting English proficiency were two of the categories that helped us do that. And then also keeping income in mind as well as another lens. So I think that's really why these groups we're focusing on, but definitely appreciate the feedback about more information about the full spectrum of historically marginalized communities.
Lacey?
Yeah, I didn't get a clear answer on how Metro is going to integrate the climate-friendly and equitable rulemaking into the process. As cities we are going to be forced to deal with this, and going through an entire process without talking about that seems not like the best use of our time, because I don't want to have to go through a whole process and then go back and correct it. So what is Metro's understanding of the rules, and how are you implementing it into this framework?
Thank you. I forgot that piece. I actually might, because I have Kim here with me, I might actually ask for Kim's
I think I will. Yes.
Thank you for the question, Mayor Beatty. So we are still working with DLCD staff on understanding how some of the provisions directly apply to the RTP versus what applies directly to city and county plans. So we are working through that. This process is going to support our whole region's implementation of those requirements. So the policies that we have in place, the new mobility policy, the draft mobility policy is in line with what is being expected for, considering other measures, performance measures as part of transportation system plans. And we will have a more full sort of description of what are the elements that this RTP will address versus what may be happening after the RTP update in line with the CFEC timelines and implementation that's underway. So there's still conversations happening to understand more fully what this RTP must deal with, and including this RTP, the financially constrained project list needs to demonstrate that it meets the regional targets that were adopted in CFEC, and that's what some of our analysis will be working to demonstrate.
Lacey, did you get an answer out of that?
No. Is it generally summed up as we don't know and we'll figure it out when it comes in? Well, that was a lot of words. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, we do
required to
know
come
what.
out. I recognize counties might not have to, but like cities will. And so how are you setting us up for success here?
Yeah, I feel, so we are doing a lot to set that up, and we do have an understanding of what does apply to the RTP and what is clearly laid out for local TSPs to do. So the analysis work that we're doing is going to support local governments in demonstrating, for example, the vehicle miles traveled per capita, which I'll present a little bit more as part of the regional mobility policy. So there's work underway in each of those policy elements that will help support local governments in meeting the rules, but there will be things beyond what the RTP can do to address that, and some of those requirements.
Thanks, Lacey, for throwing the big dead squirrel on the table there of CFAC. And I think that's one of the challenges, right? We're trying to figure out how those rules apply, all the new measures, all the new analysis. I mean, that's one of the things that's being brought up in the questions of asking the state to come back to the table is it's a tremendous amount of analysis on top of analysis and community input that we've already gotten, right? And I think to ignore it is at our own peril, right? Because these are supposed to be you do something to the city, we do things coordinated at the county, and then we get to the regional transportation plan. It should be a result of that. But what I've heard from several cities, a lot of that stuff is thrown up in the air because CFAC goes diagonal across a bunch of those plans and expectations. So I think that's one of the things we're not sure how to proceed. I mean, 80-90% of my city is captured under the CFAC rules because of our proximity to the bus line. So,
Well, I
James?
think there was,
Okay.
just one comment on that is I do think that there was some hope by cities that potentially a different governor would be chosen and these rules wouldn't be coming down on top of us, but I think they're going to, given who the governor choice is. And so I think I get it's challenging, but we're going to have to do planning around what we understand now and all the work that we're doing. Otherwise, I mean, it's easy to toss it out, but it's hard to add it in.
And I echo Lacey's concerns and comments. And I guess what I'm still looking for is a little bit of do we have an ETA, or is that too hard to come up with at this point about, because I think really the concern is the timing of the overlapping. So at this point, do we have any estimated deliverables, or are we still planning?
I guess maybe if you could clarify your question in terms of the deliverables. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
I think the point or takeaway that I got from Mayor Beatty was just that will the guidance come down before the work on the policy before we really start digging in? And are they gonna, is the timing of the guidance gonna happen before the real work? I guess that's where I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I think I understand. So we developed the work plan for the RTP and the process overall to align with what was being asked was being contemplated as part of the rulemaking that was underway. So, the CFEC rules are asking for more analysis around equity, around climate, around system completion, having an expanded view of mobility that is moving beyond just looking at the movement of vehicles, but to people and goods. And so the work that we've been doing as part of the RTP process has been done in a way that is setting us up to be consistent with that. They're coming out with more detailed guidance. And then there's other provisions like inventory work of sidewalks and street crossings and other things like that that are going to be more appropriately dealt with at the local level than at an RTP level. So that's, I think, where we're still trying to understand what is it that the RTP, we have been working to have the RTP work sort of address many of those things, or will provide information that will help support local governments as they're going forward to implement it. But the policy framework and the policies that were adopted even in the 2018 RTP are very much aligned with what was being identified in the CFEC rules, and we can work to provide more information. And maybe that's a topic for another discussion to have more time to talk about that.
Thank you.
Garrett?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the comments from the mayors about the complexity. And it strikes me that this is an added argument that it's going to be very hard to squeeze this all into a 40-day period because of the additional analysis and the additional concerns that are going to be different for each city. So additional time may be required.
Staff, we have a date certain we need to have the RTP for compliance updated, right?
Yes, as Ali said, the current plan under federal law expires December 6th. And so we need to have an updated plan for federal purposes completed by that time. And that's, we're following the work plan that JPAC and the Metro Council adopted last May, to meet that timeline. And I think some of the sequencing of this and the CFEC rules and other things that we will learn through this analysis, that there may be additional work to do, following the RTP process. And that's often the case. We have a chapter 8 in the plan that maps out additional work or things that weren't able to be resolved, but there's more discussion or more work that's needed. And that's some of that we will be sorting out. Back to Mayor Beatty's point, we know we're in the right direction and we have the pieces, but there are some things that we'll have to, as they are finalizing some of their guidance of how to implement it and clarifying what parts are for the regional transportation plan versus local plans. We're never in perfect sequence. The planning is never perfectly aligned ever. But we just try and work through together as best we can. And so we hear the concerns about the timeline, and we're working to be able to support the process and support you all in the work, and definitely recognize changes in policymakers is a big deal, and you can't just hit the ground running. But we're committed to working together with everybody.
Yeah, for those who've had the opportunity to go through this before, I think the last time it felt a little bit like, well, we were building the plane while we were trying to take off last time. And I know the 2018 felt like that. And I think that's part of the nature of this, right? Things are changing, rules are changing. That just kind of comes with the field of this kind of activity. And when you're trying to roll this much information up across this many jurisdictions, it's a daunting thing, but we will have to work our way through it. Glenn.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to just a real quick point, because I work with the CFEC stuff as well, from a few different venues or viewpoints, I guess would be. One, I think, the rules are oriented around new TSP adoption. So I think the work currently is, on Metro related to their modeling. So they're refreshing the climate smart communities work that they've done in the past as part of this RTP. The work at the city level really will be coming with future TSPs is the way I'm looking at it. And just let you know, ODOT, the OTC put some money aside. We've got a contractor on board to develop guidelines for how to develop a TSP. Those are in the websites constantly looking at ORS and whatnot. And we'll know that OAR, that the transportation planning rule does have guidelines. Then we have has standards, and we have guidance on how to develop TSPs. So that will be coming. So we'll have a resource that we can use statewide, and also with that is going to be how we model and understand VMT changes, either at TSP level or from zoning and planning changes. So again, we're going to have some statewide sources there. So cities are able to, be consistent. So it's easier to understand everything, but also to have those tools and know how to do this work. So that will be coming. So think of that as your next TSP update. We are doing, for those who are interested in updating your TSP now, it's okay to be ahead of that guidance. We're working with Beaverton, Milwaukee, and Gresham currently, and we're just having a little bit of extra work, me being a bridge between the folks at DLCD to make sure that we're reading everything right, and we're doing the steps that we think are the appropriate steps. So it's not a big problem for that. Just let you know what's happening, what's coming down the road.
Thanks, Glenn. Keith?
So RTP December 6th of what year?
2023. So next year.
Yeah.
Next year is the deadline.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I made that assumption it was 2023. So back to the questions. So are we good on the policy framework provides adequate direction and guidance to agency partners to update the RTP investment priorities? I think the big one I heard was about the congestion, right? Since we're winning the battle of being most congested, got a good national ranking. Not that that's a good thing, but that we have one heck of a high rating. The one I didn't hear anybody mention, but that was on my list of things is, and this is around the communities, those stats I think are all based on where they live, not where they work. Am I correct on that?
In the analysis that we'll be doing for the
All the maps that you showed, right? The language proficiency,
for the equity focus
equity,
areas?
all the equity stuff. Yeah, the equity focus. That's all about where people live, not where they work.
Correct. We do look at the locations of jobs and job centers for the 2040 growth concept. So we do consider jobs, but the equity focus areas, it is based on where they live.
Sorry, just chewing on my tongue a little bit about the 2040 concept that was developed over 25 years ago. Maybe being a little dated. Okay. Any other comments about the policy framework or for our agency partners? Okay, comments or questions about the process? I think we beat that up pretty hard. So I think we're good on that one. The third question was comments or questions about development of the draft revenue forecast or cost targets. Any questions or comments on the revenue forecast or cost targets? The reason I bring that one up is current inflation rates are drastically outstripping our revenue sources. So we may end up with more choices. And then to throw the other giant dead squirrel on the table, how do you cook tolling into all this since we don't have a real clear answer on tolling income and, well, I think we have a real clear answer on what tolling money will be spent on. We'll be paying off the infrastructure improvements first. But how does that roll into it?
I can start answering, and Kim, I might ask you to step in again, but just a couple of things. Yes, we definitely know about inflation for sure, and we are going to be updating the 2018 costs based on escalation as a starting point, but to the point that that will definitely be a lot different than last time. We definitely understand that, and that's one thing that we are trying to do to provide additional information as part of our work. And then as far as tolling, I know that we have been doing work on that, and there's still some questions I think that we have around the assumptions, but I will let Kim step in.
Thank you. So yes, Metro is working with ODOT on the, what assumptions to have for those tolling revenues. So those discussions are, happening. And, as you know, they have a lot of planning work that's happening, and we want to bring that information forward as soon as we can, because it's definitely not just for the funding of those projects, but what other projects might those revenues be able to help support in terms of other system improvements around those areas. So we know it's something that people want to know. We want to bring it, but we're in conversations and hoping to have it soon.
Thanks, Kim. Chris, you wanted to talk to us about role and process, since that we have such a a whole different process for approval this time.
Yeah, so I'll be really quick because I think we spent a lot of time on this, but I just wanted you all to know that your staff is already working together with us and THBR staff, because they also have projects on the regional system, to to sort of work through the projects that will be included in the RTP. A lot of this is going to be updating the 2018 RTP because, a lot of stuff didn't get built in the last 4 years. So we are already working on that. I wanted you to know that. These things require a lot of coordination because, as you know, our projects go through multiple jurisdictions. There's many reasons. Our revenue forecasts are aligned, like our vehicle registration fee, we use the same growth assumptions. So there's a lot of coordination. I just want you to know your staff is already starting. We've already had our first meeting, and we have regular meetings for coordination on this. So the January 6th start date that Ali mentioned, that's actually when you can start plugging things into the spreadsheets that that Metro provides. That's not the time we're actually starting now. So we are aware that the timeline is much shorter. We found our schedule from 4 years ago. We realized we have a much shorter time, but we are all jumping in to get this done. You might also want to know that we are at your JPEG meeting, you're reviewing the proposed approach, and then we'll be asked to act on it in December. And one of the things that staff is also doing is reviewing those evaluation measures on a project level basis to make sure that the projects we are submitting kind of show up, I guess is the right way to say, that the measures are neither too broad nor too narrow to really highlight the benefits of the investments being planned. So we are taking a good look at that. So I think the other, we included in the packet a memo with some proposed schedule. And one thing that I have to say kind of troubles me is that the coordinating committee endorsement is scheduled for, I think we've got you in for February, but Metro's extended the deadline for jurisdictions to endorse till May. And that seems a little backwards. So I think we'll figure out as we get in there. But I'm not sure if you're going to feel comfortable endorsing something to submit before all the cities have. And I'm not sure if, for multiple reasons you brought up, whether all the cities will be ready to endorse in February if they're coming in with new mayors and councilors. So I think that's something we're going to keep plugging away to get our staff work done. But that's something I think we'll want to talk about. I also want, in case no one asked this, but we do usually bring in TriMet, we bring in ODOT so they can share what their proposed investments are in Washington County as well. And Jessica Peltz can correct me, but I think we've got that scheduled for January so that we see what others are proposing in the county. We get a picture of the county package as a whole. So that's all I want to say is that we'll keep plugging along. We're already going because of this time frame and with the holidays and everything.
Anything else? Comments, questions? Okay. Well, Kim, you got to jump in a little early, but next you're up with the regional mobility policy update.
Yep.
So she's going to describe the proposed regional mobility policy update. And then Glenn Boland from ODOT is here to join. And the new mobility policy will be included in both the Oregon Transportation Plan and the Regional Transportation Plan. Just as a note, TPAC voted to move forward with the proposed new regional mobility measures, along with the 1 to 2 year implementation plan outlined, the additional work needed to test and refine the new measures, and identify revisions needed. And Mike and Chris may want to make some comments on this based on the TPAC discussions. Kim, you've got the floor.
Yes, thank you. So I'll go through this relatively quickly so you have time for discussion here. But this is, as a reminder, this is a joint effort, has been a joint effort of Metro and ODOT to update how we're defining and measuring mobility in the Portland area. And as was just stated, the current policy, the current mobility policy lives in the Regional Transportation Plan as well as the Oregon Highway Plan. And so ultimately it will result in amendments to both the RTP as part of this RTP process, and then following the RTP update as an amendment to the Oregon Highway Plan. We've been working together since 2019 on this work. It's been very technical and complicated, but has very broad policy implications. And now too, with the new climate friendly and equitable communities rules, it's intersecting with that in addition to this RTP update. So I just want to be clear that the action that we're asking of JPAC and the Metro Council is not adopting a draft policy. It's moving it forward to the RTP process for further testing and refinement next year. And as was said, there is we're focusing on updating the policy. There is going to be more work to implement it over time. And the reason that JPAC and the council identified this work as part of the last RTP update was just sort of a recognition that it was a 20-year-old policy that was very focused on vehicles, and really wanting to broaden how we were thinking about mobility, to think about land use efficiency and ensuring our land use and transportation system are working together, and so support efficient use of both our land and transportation system to focus on moving people and goods over just focus on moving vehicles, and really also bringing in this concept of reliable travel that is really important, safe, efficient, and reliable travel for people, goods, and services. So really trying to be more comprehensive in how we're thinking about it, but also recognizing that this is one of many policies in our plans. The focus of this work is at the system plan level, or the application of the policy at the system plan. So as a local transportation system plan, a corridor plan, concept plans, for example, but then also for plan amendments when a local government is amending your comprehensive plan or zoning, there's requirements that you demonstrate that that change in land use is balanced with the transportation system. And so there's some evaluation work that happens around that. And that's what this policy will, when finalized, will apply to both the system plan level and the plan amendment level. This is the current policy that was adopted back in 2000 in the Regional Transportation Plan, and then was amended into the Oregon Highway Plan. And at that time, it recognized that in areas of the region that had travel options, that it was allowing for more congestion during the peak period. It was a 2-hour peak period at that time, and really intended to focus on ensuring that freight and goods movement during those off-peak periods was able to be maintained. And over time, application of the policy has made it more challenging to implement some growth in downtowns and centers. And it's also been increasingly more challenging to meet with funding, but also sort of the community impacts that would lead you to get to achieving these different targets. And it was really not a measure that is easily communicated or able to really help guide now as we've continued to grow investments in the system in the way that would be more helpful. So throughout the process, there's been a lot of research. We started with more than 100 different measures. We engaged you and other policymakers in the region to identify what elements are most important for this policy to be considering. We developed case studies last year, and we've been working with the technical advisory committees and practitioners to get down to the 3 measures and targets that are in draft form and recommended to move forward into sort of the next phase of work in the RTP. We also developed an action plan that will support implementation, because this really is going to create change at the state level, at the regional level, as well as at the local level to implement that policy. These are the 6 elements that were identified as being most important around access, equity, travel options, efficiency, reliability, and safety. And so the policies that the draft policy statements are addressing each of these different elements. And again, this policy is one of many policies, and the work that we've done is working to ensure that it's supporting these goals of the RTP as well as other policies in the plan. These are the 6 policy statements that that were included or in draft form and recommended to move forward to bring into the RTP. Again, related to all 6 of those elements. And then the draft measures and performance targets, we've expanded to 3 measures. That one of the goals of this was to have as few measures, but be as comprehensive as we can be. And it really aligns with, these 3 measures really align with what has been identified as being important in terms of the transportation planning rule amendments that were approved earlier this year. It's relying on the VMT per capita measure and a system completeness measure for building out the plan system and doing so in a way that the planned transportation system for all parts of the system, in a way that's also ensuring that we're meeting the regional greenhouse gas reduction target that our region is required to meet through the regional transportation plan. And so these 2 measures are really the primary measures at a system planning level. And then we will also, the 3rd measure, as well as for evaluating potential impacts of plan amendments on the transportation system. So evaluating whether or not those plan land use changes are helping make progress towards that target. Are there deficiencies in the plan system that those plan amendments may need to address to help complete the system as defined in your local transportation system plan, or in the case of the RTP. At the regional level. The 3rd measure is a reliability measure that there's been, I think, we're struggling with how best to communicate this measure. I'll just say that. I think it's created some confusion about what this measure is and what it is not. It is focused on the throughways, so the freeway system, and it's really establishing a target threshold for performance of the throughways designated in the RTP. So that includes the freeways that are listed here, and that target is for no more than 4 hours per day with the speeds of those throughways fall below 35 miles an hour, which there was a lot of research that went into selecting that 35-mile-an-hour threshold. The 4 hours, which I can talk about more, or Glenn and I can talk about more, but also recognizing that there's typically a 2-hour peak in the morning and a 2-hour peak in the evening, that, you know, collectively 4 hours per day, it's going to be congested, or there's going to be more congested than other parts of the day. But that we don't want the system to degrade below that 35 miles an hour, because at that point, that's really where the system breaks down very quickly. Some of the research that our consultant team was able to do really looked at and found that between 30 and 35 miles an hour is sort of a tipping point that the system is performing, but once it gets below those thresholds, that it really breaks down very, very quickly and isn't operating well at all. And so, and we're happy to talk more about that, because that has been sort of an area of a lot of the discussion at the TPAC table as well. This is just at a very high level, the implementation plan. So, having the draft policy, the draft measures and targets that are recommended to carry forward and to further test and refine through the RTP process next year. There's other guidance that'll be developed as well that would help support local governments for around TDM and TISMO, but also how to operationalize the VMT per capita measure. That is something that, as specifically related to the CFEC rules and questions that were being raised earlier, that we will need to operationalize that through the RTP modeling work for local governments to be able to use as you're updating your TSPs. Further work would be requesting an amendment of the Oregon Highway Plan. The Oregon Highway Plan is also undergoing an update next year and into 2024. And so this policy would be considered as part of that. And as Glenn described, there's a lot of work happening already around CFEC implementation that does overlap with some of these implementation activities. So there's a lot of work happening at the state level to support that. That will also help support implementation of this policy and the RTP as well. And I just want to highlight, just the intersection of all of these different things here that are, that they are all pointing in the same direction, but there's details to be worked out over the next year and beyond that. Again, that this work and the implementation plan for this policy will help support that at the regional, state, and local level. This is the actual TPAC recommendation here. TPAC recommended that JPAC support further development of the draft measures and targets to understand the implications of the current and proposed measure, and by testing and refining it, and then also to develop an approach for the needs and solutions evaluation as part of the RTP update. So we will be, as part of the system analysis and the evaluation work, for the RTP next year, we will be reporting out these measures and targets as part of that process, and that will help inform developing that approach. This is the next step, so I'll stop here and open it up for questions. And if Glenn, if there's anything that you would like to add as well.
Hey there, Kim. Thanks. I think maybe we'll questions, but I think the one thing if I was going to be your side commentator there, I would have said something like, I think one of the important things to understand here with the reliability targets is that we're looking for needs identification, not system management and operations. So as Kim mentioned, we know if, hey, you're going slower than 35 outside of the peak, we've identified a problem. But we're acknowledging that with the resources we have, that the peak's a little different story. So as identifying the needs, then we can look at the next step. Some people have misconstrued the word average to think that's a daily average and it's an operational target. That's not the case.
Other questions, comments? Obviously, the best part is we have to make a decision on this at JPAC on Thursday. So whatever you'd like Nafisa and I to carry forward for you, it'd be good to get that across to us because we'll be the two sitting at the table on Thursday. Rick. I think Rick's having some technical problems. Jason.
All right. Couple things. I would say Tiger generally supports the work here. We think we need a plan that evaluates transportation system performance differently than it has historically. I think we've made that pretty clear. We as a community and the city and me as a leader, and I think our team were pretty disappointed that some of our perspectives on this important policy topic were not really represented at the TPAC table in discussion very well, or at all. I'd be curious to hear perhaps what Beaverton's perspective is on that as well. And given that, we really feel like we need clarity on how our WCCC reps are going to approach this at JPAC. And if there's some discussion about voting no, like if we can't all reach consensus, that we should be considering abstaining to acknowledge that some Washington County cities do indeed support this work. And so those are my comments. I'll keep them to that, but I'm hoping to hear other people's perspectives as well.
Thanks, Jason. Rick, are you stabilized? You can.
I am. Thank you for your patience. Mayor Callaway wanted me to make a few points that I think in the presentation I understood that the off-peak minimum speed would be 35. And he just wanted me to point out that when the system's broken, there's the possibility for diversion onto local streets, and that means, and other pathways for people, and that means that it's not as safe. And he also pointed out that when you have more congestion, you have more pollution, and the optimum speed on freeways, which is the safest way to travel, should be in the low 40s instead of even 35. So, and he also wanted to know how we're going to use the VMT model. If is the data there that we can rely on to use that instead of volume to capacity, which is the traditional way we try to plan our local roads for. So with that, I'll yield the floor.
Kim, did you have any comments to those?
Yeah, I can, and I'll invite Glenn to also respond. So the 35 miles an hour is a minimum threshold to maintain reliability on the system. You know, as I said, that was a threshold that was determined that based on the research that the Kittleson team had done was sort of that precipice of where the full system would break down. In terms of how it would play, this does not, having this new draft policy does not take away from local governments looking at volume to capacity as you have in your local plans, but it is looking at it in a more holistic way and not having it be the primary measure or only measure that is evaluated. So local governments can still use the volume to capacity ratio to do other evaluation work. But as Glenn said, it's a needs identification at a regional level, and the focus of this is on the reliability of the system because we know that we can't build to an uncongested state. There's going to be some congestion on the system, but how can this help us target sort of the worst places and know where that is, and that's part of the evaluation work that we will be looking at next year. So Glenn, I don't know if there's anything more you would add there.
Yeah, I think it's Kim. We've only seen early, as we've done this analysis, we looked back at the 2018 RTP and said, what would it look like if we used this target instead of the VC target? And I think when the RTP was forward, you start seeing maps that this target actually identifies significantly more of the pinch points that we all know about and feel when we drive. That weren't showing up with the VC standards. So I think, to people moved around, to Mayor Callaway's concerns about, an operational standard, we are using this to identify those places where we have bottlenecks that we might not have known before, or by the numbers we knew by our seat of our pants, maybe. The other, I want to just hit on VC at the local level. Remember, this is just what we're doing with the freeways. We don't volume to capacity is not something that really gets use in freeway planning significantly. This is much more used at the local level. And I would imagine that a lot of cities will retain standards there for the purpose of calculating development contributions to projects with proportionality, contributing shares, which is a very different subject than mobility. So yeah, what is what is Jane's development impact on rezoning on the system? Like we can use VC to help calculate that, but the current transportation planning rule says if you've got VC on the books, you have to use it to make a land use decision. Now you can use that for making decisions about what to ask for funding or for fees, but you don't have to be bound by that in making a yes or no decision on a zoning proposal. So there's
thanks for the clarification. I think we're going to continue to use volume to capacity, and that clarifies what I think Mayor Callaway's interest was in presenting this.
Wonderful.
I'm asking for people to answer and I'm muted. Frank.
Right. So Glenn.
Yes.
So on the 30, we're focusing on this 35-mile-an-hour thing. So you're mentioning pinch points and it's a benchmark. What's the distance, if you will? What are you going to consider a pinch point? And what's, let's pick on I-205 and the goal of it never getting slower than 35. How are you measuring this 35? What's the distance you're rolling over for that 35-mile-an-hour goal? Is it a mile? Is it 2 miles? How is this going to be measured?
It's a great question. And I'm not a modeler. What I think I can infer looking at what our consultants were showing us is I think that I think the segments I'm seeing on the map are basically between any intersection. There's a GIS road segment, because some places I see very short lines and some places I see some longer segments. So like 205 Abernathy to Stafford appears to be one segment. But then if you look at like downtown Portland at 405-26, you've got like very, very short segments between like the ramp at where Sunset comes into 405 and then Montgomery comes into 405 and then Broadway Drive comes off of 405. It's like boom, 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 real short segments. So right now I think it's based on that GIS. Kim, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And that's some of the work that's identified for us to continue to work on, what those segments are. So it is link-based or segment-based, and to, whether some of the segments should be combined, or, how do you treat, so the example Glenn gave of 405 that has lots of interchanges and things close together versus other parts of the system where they're spaced, further apart. But that is some of the work that we'll want to dig into a little bit more deeply as we look at this more.
Okay, because I just think, the segment that comes to my mind is, 217/Carmen to Wilsonville heading south on certain days can be a nightmare. So just wondering, you answer my question, how they're going to segment that out. Is it between 217 and Carmen, or is it Carmen to Wilsonville? But I guess figure out how they're going to slice and dice that. Right, thank you.
And I think that goes to Jason's point, right? I think this isn't the answer. This is the approval to move the process forward, right, Kim? It's not about approving one policy or another. We're trying some measures. We're going down the analysis path, but this is kind of like our start from point.
That's correct.
Lacey?
Thank you. I want to piggyback off of Jason's comments because I think they're relevant for Beaverton as well. I think our staff provided input through the process, and we agree that we need these new measures to help us achieve outcomes to meet our goal of our 2040 growth concept. Nothing is perfect, but given there's new ways to kind of capture how vehicles are moving, I think that's an important concept for us. And I do think we should not leave here until we have consensus on how we want our JPEG people to vote. And I think also recognizing it's incredibly complex of cities of different size and all of our transportation needs are vastly different. And I think one of the hardest things I often have to do as the mayor is represent the consensus of my council, even when it's not exactly what I want. And so I think perhaps we need to have a where do we want to land with this? And do we want to do an abstain vote or say we're split decision and send that decision to Metro? That is always an option, of course. But if I were the queen in voting, I would vote yes.
Okay, other questions, comments?
In case it wasn't clear from my statements, I would vote yes too.
So I've heard from two of you that we should support that Nafisa and I should support this moving forward on Thursday. Others?
Feel the excitement.
Yeah, everybody's like it's dead
excitement.
aired. Yeah. So it sounds like to get an actual motion on this one. Jason, do you have a motion or Lacey to get us off top dead center?
I'll move that we support the plan as it's been proposed and accept that it's the right way to move forward.
I'm Mayor Truax. I second that.
So motion by Mayor Schneider, second by Mayor Truax. Any further discussion?
I'll just say that I think it's a good reminder for us that a lot of what we do is moving targets and taking meaningful first steps towards addressing some of the inequities and how we do things is important. And a yes vote doesn't mean carte blanche. We support every single thing in this plan, but I think it moves us in a more positive in a direction that helps cities retain control of how we're going to do things in the next 20 years. And so with that, I would just encourage us that we're all going to not get what we want out of this a little bit.
Okay, any further discussion? Pete, was that you trying to
Yeah,
wave your
if I
hand?
could tack on to it. I think the point that we're not going to all get what we want is well taken. But I think we all have to be adults in the room and realize that we're going to have to, as Lyndon Johnson used to say, come, let us reason together. And some will not win everything, but we won't lose everything. And I think that's the other side of the coin. So as a somewhat short timer, I wish you all luck in dealing with this issue. Ta-ta.
Parting words. It looks like a lot of work. Enjoy yourselves. Thanks, Pete. Chris was trying to let me know. I think Mike had a comment he wanted to share with us, and I'm not seeing Mike. There's Mike. Mike, did you have something, Mr. McCarthy, you wanted to share with us?
I just wanted to mention some of the concerns and issues that we had with this measure as proposed. Because I was involved about 10 years ago now in promoting it. And at that point, the issue was how do we develop the Tiger Triangle when Highway 217 and Highway 99 are congested on two sides of it. And so there's a lot of value in pushing this through. I think now, it's more about Washington Square Regional Center and other areas around the county. So there's value in moving towards this. I think a couple key concerns. One is in the past, when we've opened up extra capacity or allowed more capacity on the roads to get used, it's been snapped up pretty quickly by car intensive uses. Whereas our hope was to get the transportation efficient uses, like the regional centers, through, like the fast foods and others that have used up a lot of capacity have ended up jumping in and taking it. As far as the concerns about the measure itself, one is there's still a lot of uncertainty about what completing the planned network means. And for example, whether that would include congestion pricing or tolling, whether that would require closure of all gaps along a system, including, say, the walkway underneath the railroad overpass that we're never going to be able to widen, or south side of TB Highway, for example. And then the 4 hours under the 35 miles an hour is where I had particular issue there. 35, I agree, is a pretty good cutoff between when a freeway goes from functioning to non-functioning. And the current policy allows it to basically non-function for 1 hour a day. This would change that to 4 hours a day. And the change is significant. Once it gets below 35, it loses its throughput. So the actual number of vehicles getting through on the freeway ends up being half or less of what it was. And then just, for example, one 3-lane freeway that's backed up fills 3 5-lane arterials in terms of the capacity. So that's the level of diversion we'd be looking at allowing here, is 3 additional hours of the day, or about a quarter of the daylight hours, where our freeways are no longer functioning. They're carrying maybe half of the vehicles that they would carry. And those vehicles are all spilling over onto surface arterials, along with whatever other overcapacity vehicles there were already. So I see some pretty significant safety ramifications from that. Once they divert off the freeway, they have 7 times the fatal and serious injury crash rate. And those are some serious concerns. So with those, I think there's some pretty significant direction changes needed to accomplish the original purpose of the how do we develop the regional centers in transportation efficient ways, even near congested freeways or state highways. And how do we keep the traffic from, diverting on and causing problems on Boone's Ferry or Hall Boulevard or around the region, 82nd, Powell, MLK. So those are the concerns, the points that I wanted to bring up there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make maybe a quick point of order. We allowed Mike to speak as the city rep for TPAC, and he was a participant in the TPAC vote last week. So just wanted to clarify that was the purpose behind doing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Does anybody else have concerns about letting some or all sections of freeways become dysfunctional for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon?
Is that a
No,
factor
I'm
of
not
value
against it.
statement, Jeff?
Well, if you're asking for facts, 26 has got 13 hours, or doesn't it? It qualifies under this right now. So I would say I hear Mike's concern, right? About what does that mean? And I think we've all experienced it in our different areas. Anywhere that it gets tight, traffic doesn't stop on the freeway. I'm going to say it this way: traffic diverts off the freeway, right? If you're stacked up at 217 to I-5, that just means more people are going down other ways. So I think that's the concern about allowing it to go from an hour to 2 hours. Is now we're saying
Jeff,
it's a
I
longer
think,
period.
but Jeff, I think the point though that's been made is that the 35 mile per hour number, and I think about even my own behavior. So I'm not sure I'm perfect specimen here, but if a freeway is moving at 35 miles an hour, I'm not typically looking at trying to get off of it, because it's most likely the most direct way to get where I need to go. I think diversion happens typically at speeds lower than that. And that's partly, or a big part of what the ODOT representative that was speaking today And the point that I think was being made is that once it gets slower than that, the whole thing breaks down. So that, I mean, I think that's part of the thinking. I also know we've got, Mayor Beatty's point earlier about the fact that we're talking about a direction here. We're not talking about perfection. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of key pieces to this. So I would just encourage everybody to support the bigger picture here.
No, I agree with you, Jason. It's when it slows down. The part that makes me concerned is when I'm going, I remember all too often driving to JPAC, and the recommendation was that I go over Sylvan and then up down Burnside because 26 had failed, right? We know that 26 inbound doesn't work at a certain point in the morning, and then it ceases to function. It's when that becomes the point, right? I think we are in agreement about that.
Yeah, and if it was moving at 35, it wouldn't be telling you that, right?
No. Okay, cool. Well, I think we've talked this one to death. I think Nafisa and I have pretty good direction. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand,
Aye.
say aye, whatever. Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Got one. Okay. Anybody abstaining? Rick, got you there. Okay, so passes. That's a clear message. Take it forward with the 2 hours and the 35 and the policy, and we'll continue to work with it. Thanks, everyone. Next up is Washington County, our coordinating calendar. I can't even talk today. We've got our calendar coming up. Did anybody see questions or concerns? Did you get a chance to look at that new calendar for next year? I'm taking
Chair, I would just add that it follows the pattern of this year. It's typically the Monday before JPACT, except where there's a holiday conflict. So.
Okay, I think that's a big yawner. Nobody's seeing any great jump out, so I'm sure we'll get some feedback later if we're in direct conflict with NLC or something else going on like that. That takes us pretty quickly then on to, do we need an action on that one, Stephen? Do we need to accept that?
We do have it listed as an action item.
Yeah.
Move to accept the calendar.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Mays, seconded by Mayor Fender. Any further discussion? Yes, Chris.
I just want to find out if you want to meet in person or Zoom, because if you meet in person, we need to begin reserving rooms now. If you're okay with Zoom, we'll be sending you out Outlook appointments for another year. So we don't have the equipment to do hybrid, as far as I know, which is kind of complicated and sometimes less or more successful.
We'll just say less successful.
Yeah.
Mayor Fender, Jamie, what do you got?
So for me, my vote would be to continue with Zoom. I just, first I work downtown. I have a full-time day job. And so I think Zoom is just so much easier. I do like getting together in person once in a while. So, maybe we could have one meeting where we have a working lunch, or we can get together at one point, right? But my preference would be to continue by Zoom.
Mayor Beatty, Lacey?
I concur, even though this is my full-time job, unlike everyone else here besides Nafisa. I do think meeting via Zoom brings more opportunity. And then particularly if one of us is missing and we have to have our backups come, all of them work as well. And this is a lot of people to coordinate to get into one space.
Okay. I didn't hear anybody clamoring that we had to be in person. So sounds like we move forward with Zoom. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Pete, we're not counting your vote even if you say it.
Yeah,
Come
just
on,
let the record know that I abstain, okay?
Okay, so we got one abstention. Otherwise it passed. All right, thank you. All right, coming around the horn, TPAC city representative vacancy. So Don's going to be retiring soon. Congratulations, Don. He's been our primary rep on TPAC for quite a while. He's gone at the end of the year. And that means we need to nominate and vote on representation. And basically, historically, we've kind of had the alternate roll into the primary position and then elect a new alternate. Just want to announce that we're looking at the nomination process and send your nominations to Mayor Callaway. And does anybody have any feedback on how we should proceed? Lacey.
I just want to say that I understand that the past practice has been to automatically move that person up, but we were very deliberate in our conversation about the alternate position, not automatically having the seat at the table for JPAC, because I plan on nominating Jean again, who came in second to that. And I think we need to think about that's the future for this board and what we'd like with all the new elected officials. So I'm personally advocating that we think about it differently and nominate the two people we want to represent us, even though historically it has been the vice chair or whatever we call that person. But we were very deliberate in that conversation when we voted that this was not an automatic seat to the chairship.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, sounds like then the recommendation is if you have somebody you'd like to nominate for the primary or the alternate, that you should send those to Mayor Callaway, and then we'll get a list of who that's going to be, and then I think we'll have a chance for those folks to talk to us, and then Chris, then we'll do a ballot after the December, right? Those folks can come and talk to us during the December meeting, and then we'll submit our ballots after the December meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. MPAC agenda.
Thank you. Thank you. I missed the last impact meeting, which was the 9th of November, because I was in Las Vegas taking care of a sick son who had been hospitalized, and we had babysitting responsibilities or childcare responsibilities, excuse me, for the granddaughter. So my apologies for not being there, but I heard that there was a bit of consternation on the major item, which dealt with the River Terrace UGB exchange and recommendations from MPAC. Good deal of discussion on that. And suffice to say, as far as the recommendation that came down, report that came down from MPAC, from the staff at Metro, was there were three options of land that could be swapped in or out of the UGB, or been reserved to allow for this land to be brought in. And Clackamas County, to the surprise of nearly no one, has opposed all three options. I believe the phrase was "stop the swap." And there was no opposition on any part of any city in Clackamas County on the three options. The third option, Oregon City, did indicate some support. I wish I had a ability to go to a slide to show you what option 3 is. Jason probably has a better handle on this than I do. But the discussion again was where we go on that particular swap of land to allow for River Terrace to become a part of the overall Metro process. There is no meeting for MPAC in the month of November. The next one will be sometime in December, and that will be staffed by whoever you replace, whoever you put on this. And again, a reminder that since I am did not seek re-election, you will need to work with Steve, with Mayor Callaway, on getting a replacement for the person representing other cities in Washington County. So that's where we are. Jason, did I miss anything on, Jason? Yeah, on the River Terrace stuff.
I don't think so. I mean, I've received a personal phone call from Chair Smith, telling me that their opposition didn't have anything to do with Tigard's specific ask and was really focused on Clackamas County's needs. And I shared that I understood that. And, I think really what's happening right now in this space in Clackamas County is really mostly about politics, and also probably, if I'm just being objective, I'm not sure that if I think of all three metro counties in Oregon, I think Clackamas County, from the regional perspective, is probably the least well taken care of. I will sort of objectively say that. And so I think this, this is a continued example, whether it should be that way or not. I think it's just ended up that way. And so my strong desire for our community is that our plan doesn't get derailed because of the approach that Metro's taken to our application.
Well, I hate to differ with you a little bit, but I think Commissioner Smith's comments saying it has nothing to do with Tigard's application, it has everything to do with Tigard's application. We're not having the discussion if you guys don't do your homework and do all the things that you need to do and work under the strictures that Metro and the state of Oregon have done for land use and acquisition. You guys are doing your homework, and I think there's a little bit of I don't want to say complaining, but, or another word for complaining, which polite people don't use. And it just seems to me that Clackamas County has not done the planning well enough on their own right to figure out what they want to do with the land that they have. And so if we are operating under those guidelines and rules that have been set down by the state, you've done your job. Clackamas didn't do theirs. It's as simple as that. And I hate to be cranky and irritable on this, probably my last meeting, but I get a little tired of listening to this stuff about, oh, don't take it personally, but we think your plan sucks. I don't think that's how you work things. So.
And Pete,
I'm sorry.
I think it's more than just their, lack of planning. I think there's just some of the land and the infrastructure that would be needed is just not realistic or even doable for them. And so it's some of this, I guess on a practical level, I don't fully understand the objection, because none of this space or land is even remotely developable anytime soon. And what's being proposed does not take it out of the, potential for future development in the long run. But Pete, thank you for sharing that.
But the other thing is, and I'll bite back a little bit on the land is not ready for development. We have land in Forest Grove that's inside the UGB, and it will never be developed because it was part of some of the other land that came in. Either the slope is too great, or for whatever reasons, we're not going to be building high rises there, or office buildings or single family houses, just because of the layer of the terrain. And again, I can accept that. And to use that as and then to say, well, it's not going to get developed, but somewhere down the road it could get developed. Yeah, if some land use laws get seriously changed. But I think, again, that's a lot of whining on the part of our friends in Clackamas County. Spoken by somebody who's going out the door. So thank you very much.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and park the MPAC update. We do need to get a replacement for Pete. So the small cities will have to get with Mayor Callaway and we'll draw straws or whatever we're gonna do. You can't replace Pete, but the next person up will get the opportunity.
So one other thing for the record, there are no minutes from the October 26th meeting of Impact. And so there was no item on the agenda to approve those minutes in November. And I'm still not seeing the minutes on the website from October. Obviously, I didn't see them from November 9th. Some of this stuff I cobbled together for conversations. But I think Metro's got to get that stuff out, and especially the October 26th set of minutes from Impact. The Impact couldn't vote on approving them because they didn't have them available on the 9th. And that to me is where you really got to get stuff done. So Garrett, if you want to pass that along, that maybe there ought to be a little quicker turnaround on minutes, especially since we need that information in this particular meeting here, and they haven't been available within the month for a long time.
I will pass that on.
Okay, take us around the corner to JPAC. Steve will be out, so I'll be sitting, and if he'll still be there, thank you for your feedback. Mostly what we'll be talking about is the same stuff we talked about already in here this month. So I think that'll be the feast, unless you have something else for JPAC. Nope. Okay. That takes us to other business and agency updates. Is there any city or county updates we should be hearing? Yes, Mayor Mays. I can say Mayor Mays for a couple more weeks.
Right. Pretty exciting. We have Regional 1 Act, two members are rolling off, and I am interested in being one of them. Pete is one member and Jason is the other. Pete will not be attending the December meeting because won't be in office anymore, and I think it's important to have folks there. So if there's interest in trying to fill what we as the WCCC do that work.
Right, Chris, we make a recommendation to.
We make a nomination. There will be I'm just trying to think, there will be a December meeting, I think.
Right.
Or is there, yeah, I'm just throwing off a little bit here because I actually thought this would happen in January.
Yeah, the issue is that Mayor Truax's term
Yeah.
ends in November.
Right. Yeah, so, well, it's up to you to call for nominations. It's a community representative. And WCC's role is to make nominations to forward to the R1 Act for approval. And I'm just spacing on the dates.
Don't they meet
yes,
like
there
the
is a
first
December
Monday?
5th meeting. There is an early December meeting. That's right.
Yeah, I was on it originally, and then they moved to first Mondays, and I'm like, dude, it's right on my council meeting. You can't go to it if it's right on my council meeting.
Yeah.
Lacey, do you have something in relation to this or
I would
something
just
different?
I just want clarity. Are we asking about sending a person just in December, or are we asking to make the nomination now? Because I'm uncomfortable with the latter, because I think we ended up deciding to send 2 elected officials. That might not be what we want to do this time around. Or maybe it is, but I need more than 3 seconds to process it.
You do have, if I can jump in here, Jeff, you
Yeah.
do have a little bit more time because the county has indicated to us that they will not certify the election until December 5th. So I am the mayor until December 12th when they have the swearing in ceremony. So you're stuck with another month of me as mayor of Forest Grove. We thought we were out the door after tonight's meeting would be our last meeting, but that's not the case. So if there is a meeting on December 5th, I'm still the mayor of Forest Grove at that time. And if that gives you a little bit of extra breathing room, then I think that's a good thing. So just thought I would get that in there, and I apologize for jumping ahead of somebody that was in line. I think it was Mayor
I
Lenahan.
thought you were out the door, young man, so that.
Yeah, so did I, but I
Yeah.
remember things though. And yeah,
No, I'm glad you said something, Mayor Truax, and I agree with Mayor Beatty as well, that waiting, I did a little research and I was hoping that we could definitely have you on board until December, and it looks like we will, so.
So with that in mind, Chris, can we, it sounds like we need to figure out what we want to do for reps. And then per Lacey's question, right, is it, do we want to send mayors again like we did last time, or do we want to do something different? And then who that is, we need to decide that at our December meeting.
You could,
So we're
you could
staffed for
decide,
Monday.
the meetings are every other month. So you could decide either in December, or you could wait until you have new mayors or anyone else new in January. Because the next R1 meeting is not until February. So if you would want to wait until January, you could do it then and give you some time to think about it. There is a quirky thing in the bylaws that say a certain percentage of the members need to be elected. So we do need to check in to sort of make sure that balance is met. But you can sit on this and come back in January with nominations.
Okay, if we got time, let's see if we can have a discussion topic and do a check step at least into December, please, Chris.
Okay, yep.
Okay, other city county updates? Pete, you trying to do it, or you got your hand up for fun? Pete's gone. Okay. Chris, did you want to talk about the MSTIP?
Oh, yes, we had, this came up at the TAC, at the WCCC TAC, is a question about when, we are coming every month to you. So when are we coming back again? And at the WCCC TAC, Aaron Wardell just gave a short recap, just saying that, our board has expressed a lot of support for all the work that's been done to date, and the really good outreach and the attention to all the projects and the descriptions of the costs. But at this point, we need some more focused time for our board to work through this. And with the holidays cutting their meetings in half for November and December, that really kicks it into early next year. And then we will be needing some time to work through these recommendations in the process early next year. So it's all been really good work. We just need a little bit more time to work through this, developing the recommendations, and then we'll be back to you for your input. So we'll probably, generally, we start with some staff recommendation, go to the TAC, go to the WCC, and this will go back to our board. And so it'll take a bit more process, but I just wanted you all to know that all the work that's been done so far has been well received. It's just gonna take a little more time.
Okay. Regional Toll Advisory Committee. Do we have any update from that?
There's gonna be no meeting this month, but we did have a meeting last month, or now October, in Portland, where we went over the charter, and there's still some changes that are gonna have to be made to get the charter to where the members of the committee are happy with it. There was quite a bit of discussion on the type of federal funds and federal planning guidelines that are used for the tolling guidance. There's one set that is used for bridges from federal guidance, and there's one for 205 itself. So they're running under the federal rules for the bridge right now because they postponed a decision on expanding the width, the lane capacity of 205 at the time, and a continuing discussion of the money being collected, how it's going to be spent, and how much money is going to be collected. ODOT keeps will not answer that question yet. They've got a little graphic of the water dripping down into several buckets. But everyone's concerned about the amount of money that's going to be eaten up by administration of the toll and paying off the debt for the toll, and no money being left over for dealing with transit and diversion. So that's more to come on that. I can't remember. I think we're having a meeting in December, but it's almost the same time as the holidays. So we meet the 4th Monday of the month. So I'm looking forward to hearing more on a December meeting.
Thanks, Frank. Forward Together. Mr. Bryan, did you have anything for us on that?
Sure, I just wanted to give a quick update to you all about the ongoing process we have underway for Forward Together. First of all, thanks so much for all of the comments that we received from each of your jurisdictions, in addition to the many letters and feedback we received at this meeting and from the many other city council and county commission visits. We got 4,600 comments and 500 in-person visits to our open houses. So a lot of great feedback on that service concept. And I did just want to clarify, and I can send along the news post that TriMet did put out about this, because I know there has been some questions about, is this a plan for the next 5 years for all transit improvements we will be making? And just to assure you all that the next steps, there will be additional opportunities for public engagement before any changes will be made. At the earliest, we're likely to have an open house in January to start talking about the first round of any potential changes to go into effect. And so we'll definitely be sharing any updates for to this group, as well as to all who did provide comments. We will be bringing a revised concept that incorporates the feedback we received to our board to be able to begin the process of looking at the next round of changes. We'll be bringing that to the board in December, but it will not be a plan that cements that this particular line will have this level of frequency or this line will go away. It will just be the general concept of the feedback that we received. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew about that, and we're happy to come back and share more information as those changes get incorporated in. And also just to let you know, as we've been talking about long-term transit goals in Washington County and the region, to also just emphasize that in addition to the changes that we'll be looking at as part of Forward Together, which is the fiscally constrained service concept. So what we think we will have the money and operators to implement, that we will be coming back around to start looking at the Forward Together 2.0 and the unconstrained, if additional money becomes available during that, money and operators become available during that time frame, as well as the longer term look at where we need additional transit service. So that will definitely be building on much of the feedback we received from all of you. And we did get a federal grant to for that second round of the process, Forward Together 2.0. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that this is definitely not what is going to the board is a final, but a starting point. And then there will be some specific lines to start commenting on as we look at any changes to implement in fall 2023. So that's the high level update. I'm happy to send along what we put out about that, and then the date for that board meeting, as well as the open house in January once we've got it. But Mayor Bubenik, I see you have a question, or Stephen might have been first, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or an unrelated update.
Unrelated, or is this TriMet Forward stuff?
Mine's unrelated. I just checked the RTAC meetings on December 5th, but TriMet is also presenting the Forward Together at City Council tonight and 12.
Stephen,
Yeah, so we're continuing to talk with partners. We're not updating any potential changes to incorporate what we've heard yet. So we're not getting ahead of that board update, but I'm sure Tom Mills will share some similar topics tonight in terms of clarifying that there's more public engagement piece. So that's what I got. Stephen, unrelated?
Unrelated, yes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Stephen, what you got?
Yeah, while we were talking about changes to committee membership, I just thought it's a good opportunity for us to just put a flag in WCCC membership changes as well. So our bylaws call for election of officers at the first meeting in odd numbered years. So we'll be doing that in January. And then obviously there will be some changes in membership due to folks terming out or leaving their offices, and so we'll need to, the bylaws do ask that your governing bodies designate a representative and an alternate. So just a flag in that for everyone.
And I had it in my head, and I don't remember if that's the way we got it in our bylaws or just in my head. Frank's next in the barrel since he's the alternate chair for this, or do we just, everybody knew in January?
Yeah, the bylaws, I just pulled it up, says the vice chair will assume or shall assume the chair's duties in the event of the absence and shall become chair at the beginning of the next 2-year term unless a majority of the voting members elect a different member to serve as the chair. So it essentially does, it's sort of assumed, but does require some affirmative action.
But we could recall him, is what you're saying.
Call it what you will.
Okay. All right. That's the forecast. Chris, you had a couple things you wanted to talk to us about?
Just a couple things about upcoming agenda items. We've been focused really for now on the I-205 toll project. I think many of you probably know that the NEPA analysis, the environmental analysis, is now starting on the rest of the toll projects, all of I-5 and the rest of 205. And that, in addition to the low income rules advisory committee, there's a lot going on right now. So we have asked for ODOT staff, Urban Mobility Office staff, to give us an update so you can all be prepared for the key times to weigh in at the December meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that more about tolling, but it's important. It's really important to track this and have the opportunity to weigh in. And then the other future items, we know that the other two that have been on our updates list for you for some time now is the work going on planning for TV highway. So we will look for an appropriate opportunity, if not December, early January, for an update for the rest of you on that. I know several of the mayors are already involved in the TV highway corridor, as well as the West Side multimodal improvement study that ODOT and Metro are leading in the 26 corridor area. So just want you to know that we'll be looking for appropriate times to bring those forward to you as well in the future. So that's all I had.
Frank, you got some?
Yeah, just to follow on with what Chris was just saying about the NEPA analysis. It was at the last meeting, it was brought up about, how you're going to study diversion, the impacts, funding. And I was astonished that all this is part of the NEPA process. All those things that we thought are being looked at by the RTAC really is not. A lot of things are going to be part of the NEPA process. So we need to be paying attention to what they're including in this analysis and make sure they're not missing something that's important to your community. Because if it's not in this NEPA analysis, they're not going to consider it when it comes time to tolling.
Cool. Anything else for the good of the order? We're in our last minute or two. Chris,
So,
you look like you had something.
I do. Will Mayor Truaxon bless us with his attendance at December? I'm trying to think of if we're past his cutoff, because I do want to say how much, I know Commissioner Rogers spoke at the beginning, but I do want to say how wonderful it's been to have you on all these committees over the years, Mayor Truax. I've watched you for many years at MPAC as well. So I just want to say something. I know you all mayors get a chance to say that to each other, but staff don't get a chance to speak up much. So this is our last chance. I want to put in my 2 cents.
Here.
I'll echo that too. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, we got to razz him this weekend, so.
Yeah.
And you know, it's important coming from the people who do the work out there on the daily basis, get in the trenches. It's nice to hear that you think I'm helping you out, and I appreciate that.
And love the quotes. I've written them down. I wish I'd kept them all together.
You will be missed, Pete. You will be missed. If nothing else, we'll be much less colorful and character rich.
We need a
Yeah,
new
but-
historian.
Thank
Garrett?
you all.
Garrett, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to mention, everybody maybe knows, but Metro last Thursday approved the addition of that 50-acre industrial parcel in the Helvetia area to the Metro boundary, which means it's now suitable for development.
Cool. Thanks for the update on that. Pete, you had a closing comment? We're there. Just say goodbye.
Thank
right,
you
thanks,
all.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Looks like we're adjourned. Thank you.